Hey everybody, it's Don. On this episode of The Naturalist, I'm doing a big tree tour of Lexington, Kentucky in the heart of the bluegrass. So let's go. At this stop, I'm at Castlewood Park, which is a park retaining a large number of pretty big, old, gnarly trees. It is situated around an old Gothic manor. And so let's take a look at that first, and then we'll go visit a couple of the park's larger trees. So let's take a look at Castlewood Manor. Well, appropriately, a crow flying overhead. This is Castlewood Manor. I'm in Lexington, Kentucky. And this building, I think, was built in the mid-1800s. And it was located on probably 150 some acres and preserved a lot of large trees when they developed this area. The first two trees I'd like to highlight at Castlewood are located right near each other, and they're among the biggest you can find at this park. So right behind me is this giant bur oak. So I measured this tree with my tape, and it's about 6 feet in diameter. Okay, that tree, bur oaks grow relatively fast, but still this tree is at least 300 years old, maybe more, maybe 400. And it has a nice big scar on it from a lightning strike. Okay, and it has all kinds of, it's had various insults throughout its life. You can see there's big dead branches up there, and the tops are broken off of a lot of trees in this park. But this is one of the bigger trees you're gonna find here, which is a mighty bur oak. So let's get out here and take a look at the leaves. There's a bur oak leaf. There's some variability in what these look like, but the key with bur oaks is the top half of the leaf can often be a lot less lobed than the bottom half of the leaf. So that one looks kind of like your typical oak leaf there, but maybe I'll find another that shows what I'm talking about right here. Okay, on this one you can really see how the top half of that leaf is much more rounded, less deeply lobed than the bottom half. So that's characteristic of bur oak. The other thing about bur oaks that give them their name are the acorns. So let's look around at some acorns, and particularly their caps. So here's one. Okay, there's a bur oak acorn, and all these burrs are what give rise to the name bur oak. Very large cap. The acorn itself is very large. It can get to be the size of a golf ball. This one's the size of a jack ball. Here's another big one. Okay, so there is the reason for the moniker bur oak right there. Okay, and bur oaks were icons of the bluegrass woodland pastures. These would have been environments that were largely maintained by the activity of bison, large herds of bison that maintained prairie and grassland kind of conditions with widely scattered trees. So you could think of them as woodland pastures. As time went on and bison disappeared, and we farmed the land and developed the land, woodland pastures have largely disappeared as well. So they're kind of a rare occurrence these days in Kentucky. But this area of the bluegrass is known for these woodland pastures. They're only found in a few areas in the US, in Kentucky and Tennessee. And so this particular park was probably situated in a woodland pasture when it was developed. Okay, the Castlewood Manor over here was built in the early or mid-1800s, and so this was probably largely a woodland pasture when it was built. Okay, but that's a nice mighty bur oak with that nice beautiful lightning scar that it's healed around, and the tree in general looks quite healthy, otherwise it's crowned. There's a wedding going on in Castlewood Manor over here today. So the other big feature here at Castlewood are the number of large blue ashes. Blue ashes were also a denizen of the bluegrass, and this park houses a number of really large diameter trees. They're all very gnarly. Their tops are broken off, branches are missing. they're hanging in there, and they're also probably in the order of 300-year-old trees. So here's a large blue ash that I measured earlier, and this one's about 5 feet in diameter. Really nice flaring root base, root flare. But it's hanging in there. And as I said numerous times, blue ashes can hang in because they are not attractive to emerald ash borer. And if they do get, if they do get some eggs, they generally are more resistant to the beetle. So they've survived largely in the face of emerald ash borer, although they can decline for various other reasons. So there's a lot of these. This is the, I think, somebody's happy to be getting married today. That's one of the nicer examples right there, but they're scattered all throughout. Here's one that's basically had its top chopped off, fell off probably, but it's also still alive. But that's a blue ash, just a very short one. Nice gnarly. These trees are very good models for bonsai, for example. I talk about that all the time. But thick trunks, short scars, hollows, flaring root bases. These are all the kinds of things you try to mimic in bonsai. Here's another blue ash, also in the vicinity here. All these trees are quite close to each other. Okay, and again, the same story. The canopy I'm seeing is healthy, but of course there are big, large scars and large branches that have been broken off and so forth. So this is, these are one of the cool things you can see here at Castlewood Park. Okay, on to the next stop. Before I leave Castlewood, I'll just show you what I think is actually the largest diameter blue ash, although it's barely hanging on these days. It's lost its upper half. It has a few lower branches alive, but even those show a lot of dieback. It's quite hollow. I've seen squirrels go in and out of it. This one's a little larger than 5 feet in diameter. So this is the largest diameter blue ash in Castlewood Park. See it while it's still here, because I don't believe this one will be around for that many more years. My next stop is the campus of Transylvania University in Lexington, Kentucky, an auspicious place to visit in October, a couple weeks before Halloween. But there's a special tree or two here. There's at least one I'm going to show you. So let's take a walk. So this is an old university founded 1780, as you can see. It is a kind of embedded in Lexington. Historic, very beautiful historic buildings, as you can see. It has a very special tree over here, and that is the kissing tree. This tree that you see in front of me is a very large and healthy white ash. Clearly it's been treated against emerald ash borer, but what makes this tree special? Well, its size. One, it's 5.5 feet in diameter. I just measured that thing. And it's called the kissing tree because on this campus in conservative Lexington, you used to not be able to show public displays of affection. However, you were given a break if you were found underneath the kissing tree with your love, and you could get away with it. The administrators would look the other way if you happened to be under the kissing tree, you know, doing your thing. So this is the kissing tree, large white oak, or white ash, excuse me. Here's a little bit of signage here. I visited this tree about 4 years ago, I think, and I think at the time it had maybe something built around the base of it, as I recall, like a little deck or something. But now I see that it's open. And you know, these kinds of trees, I talk about ashes a lot, right? So this is a tree that's very vulnerable to emerald ash borer, but this one's healthy. That means it must be being treated. And there are ways to treat trees that include injecting the trunk at various points along the trunk and injecting systemic insecticides that will be taken up by the vascular system of the tree, moved out into the branches, and protect the tissues where the larvae of emerald ash borer feed. And the adults feed on leaves a little bit, so it would also kill adults that would feed on leaves that were, you know, rich in these insecticides. You can also put insecticide into the root zone and have the tree take it up in that way. So there's multiple ways to treat a tree, and they are effective. As you can see, this tree is in quite good health. This is a species that's quite susceptible to emerald ash borer, so they've been taking care of this one for sure. And so that's the kissing tree. Before I leave Transylvania University, I want to show you just a couple more things and tell you a little story. But this building behind me, this Greek Revival structure, just kind of illustrates, you know, the money that was behind the development of this university. Henry Clay, for example, was a large benefactor for this university originally. So this building was built in the 1830s, and I believe it had a major fire at one point and was renovated. Okay, it was just an amazing structure, Greek Revival structure here on campus. It's called Old Morrison, and it's surrounded by two stately pin oaks on either side of its stairwell. But the other thing I want to tell you about Transylvania is this is the site of a pretty famous book heist. And that book heist involved some books of relevance to the Naturalist. So the library here at Transylvania housed several fairly rare books in the area of natural history. One was an edition of one of Audubon's works, and one was a first edition of Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species, housed in the library here. And let's see, about 20 years ago, there was a little conspiracy to steal those books and sell them and try to profit off of that by a couple of students, kind of struggling students and friends. And so, as you can imagine, they did do it. They caused more damage than I think they planned to do on the way out. But they got caught, of course, and got in some trouble for that. But you can see this in dramatic form because a movie was made of this about 6 or 7 years ago. It's called American Animals, and it's a quite good movie, and it's set right here at Transylvania University and deals with this book heist that was carried out here. So it's very interesting, and I'd highly recommend it. Okay, so on to our next stop. My next stop here in Lexington is at St. Joseph's Hospital. And you might be wondering what the heck I'm doing here, but you'll soon see. So let's go. The reason I'm at St. Joe's Hospital in Lexington is because of this tree. This is a bur oak, and an iconic bur oak that was so important that they built the parking garage around it. So that's not the base of the tree. The base of the tree is a couple floors down. So let's take a look at this thing. This thing has been, it still seems relatively healthy, but I see it's received a lot of pruning. It's had a lot of dead wood removed and branches removed and things. Okay, but this branch of the hospital seems to be unused largely now. So across the street is a newer facility, so I don't know if they simply don't use this now or what, but in any case, I sure hope whatever happens to this campus, they preserve this tree. It's very unique. So let's see if we can get kind of close to it here. I'll go downstairs and measure it. It's beefy. All right, the base is down there, about 10 feet down or so. And that is a massive bur oak. That's a 300, 400-year-old tree for sure. So it's kind of was I don't know how much debate it took to get them to build around this thing. Or in some cases, I believe you're required to do this to protect these ancient trees in this city, in this state. But this is the iconic St. Joe's oak, a bur oak. So what I'll do is I'll step downstairs and get a measurement of it, and we'll take a look at it from down there. This is certainly one of the more unconventional locations for a massive tree, but I'm now at the lower level of this parking deck, and this is the base of this bur oak. I just took a measurement on it. It's about 6 feet in diameter, so it's a massive tree. Very similar in size to the one I showed you at Castlewood Park. And here's just a little canopy view up and out. Very unique angle, and there's this little platform built around it that is elevated about 5 feet, 6 feet off the ground. So had I measured it a little bit lower, it might be even a little bit larger in diameter. I noticed that they have a dedicated water line that comes out here so that they can water this tree, I believe, on occasion. Because otherwise it's pretty well removed from any natural precipitation runoff. Of course, its roots would be going tens of feet deep and wide and accessing sources of groundwater that we, they're down there that we don't need to influence, but some surface watering, I'm sure, will help this tree. So there you go. There's the famous St. Joe's oak with a parking deck built around it. Okay, on to our next location. My final stop on this big tree tour of Lexington, Kentucky is at the Lexington Cemetery. And so this cemetery is just rich with trees. Tree species diversity, sizes, and historical markers and everything. So it's a quite impressive place for big trees and old trees. So I'm going to start out with the biggest and maybe the oldest, maybe not, but it's the probably the most fantastic, but you've got to see it soon because it's probably not long for this world. And that's the tree in front of me here. This tree is an American basswood. And I measured this tree just a little minute ago. You can see it flares at the base, but just above that flare, this tree is about 8 feet in diameter, just shy of 8 feet in diameter. It is one of the larger trees I've ever measured with a tape in the eastern US. Yeah, I've measured larger trees elsewhere in California and such, but this basswood now, Tilia americana, is the national champion basswood. There's a little dispute on that, but the claims are that this is the national champion basswood, which again is something that trees get a point system based on their height, their canopy spread, and their girth. And that all goes into a formula, and you calculate a point system. And this one had been declared the national champion. I think there is some dispute that one in Pennsylvania might actually score higher. But nonetheless, this is it. This is the an icon here at Lexington Cemetery, and here's a plaque that back in the bicentennial year, this tree was recognized as being here when the Constitution was signed. So it's an impressive tree. Now, this tree has been kind of a half tree for quite some time. Let me pan up now. You can see that it's only half its height, not even half of its mature height was left for a long time. But we also just had some massive storms, the remnants of the hurricane in the Gulf hit the Midwest, and I see this tree really took a hit. There's one branch that is broken and still hanging right there, but then on this side, the larger branches that were remaining up here, larger live branches, broke off. And you can see some of the cleanup that occurred down here. And so this is really unfortunate for this tree because there's not a whole lot left of it. So you can see some of the remaining live parts are now dead. There's one good branch remaining. You know, it's live and pretty solid looking, but that tree is hollow inside and falling apart. And so if you have any interest at all in seeing the national champion basswood, I would do it pretty soon because I don't know how long this thing they'll keep it standing. But it's pretty cool to be up close to such a large tree here in the eastern US. An American basswood at that. So I'll wander around here and see a couple of other historic sites and trees before we conclude this episode. So on to the next tree. From your history books, you might remember that Lincoln was born in Kentucky, Abraham Lincoln, at a site kind of west of Lexington. And in terms of the historical nature of Lexington Cemetery, here's a little plot I'll show you here that's of relevance to Lincoln. This is the Todd family plot. And of course, Mary Todd Lincoln was Lincoln's wife, right? So this is the family plot from which Mary Todd Lincoln came from. So I see Todds on stones all across here. All right, so here's a little monument with Todds all throughout here. So these things go back to the 1700s, some of these. This is a very old cemetery. And one other interesting thing about this little spot, this plot, is there's a special tree near and dear to my heart right beside it. And that's this tree right here. This smallish tree. This is called a white fringe tree. So anybody who knows me probably knows why this is important to me, but in 2014 I discovered that this tree is vulnerable to emerald ash borer, even though it is not an ash tree. It's a relative in the same family, and I found in my neck of the woods in Dayton, near Dayton, Ohio, that this tree was being attacked by emerald ash borer. And we confirmed that across the whole Midwest, essentially, and part of the Northeast. So it was not an isolated phenomenon. This particular tree I can't really see has been attacked through its history. Looks pretty good, but that was an interesting find that really surprised some people at the time, and we certainly ran with that for quite some time in terms of research. So that's white fringe tree, makes a beautiful white lacy flower in the spring that smells great, and makes these olive-like fruits in the fall. So this one has neither of those right now and seems to be in pretty good shape. So, and again, it's gracing the Todd family plot here in Lexington Cemetery. Can't get enough bur oaks here in Lexington. So here's one from the Lexington Cemetery. That's an absolute monster. I just measured the diameter of that thing, and it's about 7.5 feet in diameter. Bur oak. Now, the problem is, it's barely there. So it's missing a good bit of its top, and it's barely alive. There's a few live branches on it, okay, here to the left side of it. But it's massive, the girth is massive, and but again, I don't know how much longer it has here, so if you want to see it, I would see it soon. I'm also seeing some giant wasps entering a hollow in this tree. I'm going to try to get up close to, but right now I don't know what they are. They are giant. I'll have to ID these things. They're about the size of cicada killers, but I don't know what they are. So I'll look into that and maybe add a text box to describe it. But there you go, just a massive bur oak in Lexington Cemetery. I'll conclude this episode in the dappled shade of this ginkgo tree in Lexington Cemetery on the big trees of Lexington, Kentucky. So if you're into big trees, they've got them. I've highlighted a few for you today, but they're located all throughout the city, just lining many of the city streets. So if you want to take a road trip, see some big trees, drink some good bourbon, Lexington, Kentucky's hard to beat. See you later.